Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for waiting. I had some technical difficulties this morning, afternoon. As you can see, I have the old school microphone on, but this was the only way for me to make this happen because, as you know, technology does what technology does. Good afternoon, everybody on the east side. Good morning, those on the west side. Thank you for joining us today. As some of you may know, or those that don't know, I am Charisma. Charisma Cares travels the world, and I travel just about full time. Me and my son, who has special needs, and we do this. This is made possible by investing in real estate. So on here, we talk all things travel, your exodus, your black sit, whatever it is to escape the US. But we also sprinkle in some real estate, some rentals, how you can house hack, things you can do with your house to make you money while you're gone. So I'm super excited because today I have Miss Kelly Michelle. I have been following her and stalking her YouTube for a minute now. So I really want to introduce her to you all. Miss Kelly Michelle, tell us about yourself.
Well, hello everyone. So I am also a real estate investor. I specialize in midterm rentals. But the reason why I have chosen to stick with rentals, I should say, is because I love to travel. So that is like a big passion of mine, and I was looking for a way that I can get my money, of course, in a laid back manner and still be able to travel whenever I wanted to and for however long I wanted to. So that's a little bit about me.
And that's why I wanted Miss Kelly on here because I tell y'all, people think that real estate is only being a landlord and you have to be there and you have to make things happen and you can't ever leave. But that's the old school landlord. That is
Mhm.
not what we're doing anymore. We are not staying put. We are automating things and we are finding different ways to make money. So, what I love about what Miss Kelly Michelle does, you do long-term rentals as well,
Yes.
but your bread and butter are midterm rentals.
Yes. Well, you know what? Realistically, both of them are my bread and butter.
Mhm,
But midterm rentals, that's a relatively new term. I mean, they've really been out for a while. Is They were just called corporate rentals.
mhm.
But now people are expanding, and I've expanded as well to cater to more than corporate people. We have all different types of people who just want to stay in the property for 30 days or longer, that stay. So both of them, definitely are my bread and butter, but midterm rentals is a little bit more.
Okay. So a good mixture with your portfolio. So
Yeah.
for those that don't know, tell us what exactly are midterm rentals and how are they different than short term or long term?
Okay, so midterm rentals are basically properties, or it could be a room in your home or something like that, that you rent out for 30 days or longer. Typically, my guests stay from 3 months to 6 months.
Mhm.
So I cater to a variety of people, such as the traveling medical professionals. I have some corporate people in my properties. I have a person who's going through a divorce and it's just a transition in life. So he's actually from my city, but wanted to stay close to where his actual home is because they have children together. So he's in transition. He's in one of my properties, and we don't know when he's leaving. So it's okay with me
Right.
because he's paying those rates, right?
Mhm.
We've had like students, medical students, like all kind of people. So realistically, even digital nomads. So you guys on here, if you're not ready to jump out the country, but you want to stay in the US and travel around and you work remotely, those people stay in midterm rentals as well. So it's a variety of people. It has definitely grown, and that's why it's become more and more popular. Now, with short term rentals are rented out for 30 days or less. So, those are typically going to be your vacation rentals, right? So, you'll find those properties in locations where they're close to main attractions and things to do and all of that. But with midterm rentals is, like I said, catered more towards the professional. So instead of being close to those attractions, they will be close to maybe like the major hospitals or major corporations or universities, things like that. So it's just a different mindset. But the midterm rentals are more laid back than short-term rentals because, with short-term rentals, people are constantly coming in and out. So it's a lot of wear and tear on the property, a lot of cleaning, a lot of maintenance, and things like that. Well, with my midterm rentals, I only touch them really once every 3 to 6 months. Unless one of my guests has something that they need, and that's really rare, I'll touch it in between. But even when they give me a call, it's something minor like, oh, the batteries in the lock aren't working or something. I just need to go change them out, or smoke detector needs new batteries. Like little minor stuff that I can take care of myself is what it is. I have not had to call in a handyman or anybody while I've had a midterm rental guest in my properties. Now, long-term rental, everybody's familiar with that because long-term rentals are actual residences. So these are not places that are going to be furnished. They're unfurnished. This is where people live for a year or more. So those are more places where people are more established. So that's the difference between the three.
Okay. All right. So for those that didn't get it, short-term rentals are typically less than 30 days. They're what we typically see as your Airbnb.
Mhm.
Long-term rentals, you're renting the apartment, you're renting the house, you're living there a year or longer, your typical leases. Mid-term rentals, pretty much in between.
Yep.
So what's interesting is I've been using midterm rentals for my entire travel journey. I basically have been taking short-term rentals, going on Airbnb and saying, well, I probably want to stay longer than a month. The thing about that, trying to use a short-term rental or Airbnb and stay longer, is that what I found was that those rentals typically are not equipped for a longer stay.
Mhm.
At the time, people weren't doing as many midterm rentals, especially abroad. So what I kind of want to talk about is what is the difference, because some of us may think, okay, a short term rental, so I could just turn my short term rental into a mid-term rental easily because I have everything I need, so I don't really have to do anything. But as a consumer, I know that's not to be true. And as the person with the rental, I'm pretty sure you know that not to be true as well. You just can't say, oh, my short term rental is now a mid-term rental.
Right. So there are a few differences. Let's just start with what's in the property, right? So for the midterm rental, if you have a designated workspace, that's always going to be the best, right? Because a lot of times we're all working from home at some point or another, even if it's just our personal business. We are working and we're bringing our laptops, we're bringing our extra monitors or whatever it is we need to bring with us because we know we're going to be at this location for a long period of time, right? So that's different. With short-term rentals, nobody's really focused on that because people are coming in and out. So nobody's really worried about a dedicated workspace. So that would be one main difference. Then also, just as far as like the kitchen amenities and things like that, yes, in a short-term rental, we have our basic kitchen amenities, but with midterm rentals, again, these people are staying longer. So you would need a little bit more to make them feel comfortable. Now, there were some things I didn't even think about at first, like small things like blenders. I
Mhm.
wasn't worried about that when I had a short-term rental, but as a midterm rental, I did have a couple guests request blenders. So that was something I had to start incorporating. Just little things like that, like crock pots, just little bitty things that we use in our regular homes on a regular basis. Those would be some of the same things you would put in a midterm rental. Now, as far as rates are concerned, the rates will be different from a short-term rental and a midterm rental. Short-term rentals, you're going to be able to charge more. Again, these people are mostly coming on vacation or for like leisure purposes. But for midterm rentals, it's going to be a little bit less, but it's still going to be more than what you would charge for a long-term rental because you're still furnishing the property, you're still taking care of all of the utilities and all of the same stuff, right? But these people are now staying longer, which means you have less of a vacancy rate than you
Mhm.
would with short-term rentals. So you're going to drop that price down because they're staying so long, but you don't have to worry about their property for several months. So that's a little bit of the difference. Did that answer your question, or
It
did you need
did,
a little bit more?
yes, it did because I know that a lot of people say, well, doing short-term rentals is really where it's at to make the money. But for me, I'm more of a work smarter, not harder.
Right.
So I don't have to make all the money. I just need to make some of the money.
Mm-hmm.
So if I
Mm-hmm.
can make more money, but I'm not bothered as much, I can, lay on the beach, sip out my coconut and don't have to worry about anything cuz I did the Airbnb when I first went to Panama, which we're going to talk about cuz Miss Kelly is thinking about going to Panama.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first went, I did the short term rental, and I rented it out and I was just kind of trying it out. I did it with my own residence. And I was like, oh, these people bother you too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Like they are constantly texting you and asking you about stuff. Then they got to the point where they were asking me about, I'm in Georgia, so in Atlanta, and about jobs. And I was like, what's going on? Like,
Oh no.
we're not friends. Like, you're just supposed to use the rental and leave me.
Yep.
So it was just a lot, and then the turnover is a lot, and trying to manage the different people coming in because I typically manage my rentals.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I liked about midterm rentals. A lot of my audience, they're either traveling, and they want to rent their entire home, or they may be living at home and they want to rent out a room because they want to start making some extra money. For those that's part of the Exodus, we have a tentative trip I've heard about. It's going to be in South Africa and Mauritius, and we're gonna need some coins. We're gonna
Right.
need some extra money. So even if you're still working and you're not traveling full time, if you have an extra bedroom, two extra bedrooms, if you decide to leave and you have that house, you can start looking at midterm rentals.
And not even just like a bedroom. If you have a basement, like you guys,
Mm.
my mom has taken her basement and turned it into a whole little studio apartment. And I know several people who have done the same thing. You can do that. I have one of my students turned her garage, she expanded the top of it and turned that into an apartment. And
Mm.
and it's filled and she's making money off of it. So it's not just rooms. If you have any spare spaces wherever you live, you can turn that into something. But it also depends on the location. So this may not work
Okay.
everywhere. So let's make sure that's clear. You do have to be in a location where it would attract people who are traveling into town for business purposes. So keep that in mind.
So, how do we determine if we're in the best location for a midterm rental outside of doing a long-term rental?
Well, basically, I'm gonna start off with like the main categories, right? As far as people who would stay in a midterm rental.
Mhm.
If you are near a major hospital, right? So a trauma level 1 or level 2 hospital, and you can look those up. You
Mhm.
can just simply go online, look up the hospitals closest to your home, and see what trauma level they are. Usually, you're going to find some travel medical professionals, right? If you're near any kind of medical district, you're going to have traveling medical professionals that's coming, right?
Mhm.
If you are near a university, you're going to have university students. Now, that's up to you if you want to accept undergrad, grad, those are different parameters, but that will be another group of people. If there's major construction happening in your area, there are construction crews that come into town from other places to work on projects in different states. Though that's another group of people who can stay in your property, right? So there has to be something, like I said, a corporation before, a major corporation that brings in people like interns on a regular basis or something like that. That would be another good location. So it really does vary. There are a lot of different categories, like even entertainment. When there are people coming into town to shoot movies, those cast members and crew members need a place to stay. That's another category, right? So it just really kind of depends. You do have to have something happening in your area that will attract those types of people to come.
Okay. So if y'all aren't taking notes, I'm taking notes. I don't know if you all are. I don't know if you grabbed your paper and your pen or you're jotting this down in your phone, but Miss Kelly Michelle is dropping gems. So if you see me look down, that's because I'm going to take my notes. I don't know. You decide if you want these notes, but I need these notes. So when you're looking and you name so many different things, like some of these things I never even would have thought of. I'm in Metro Atlanta, we're always doing construction here.
Mhm.
So somebody asked, where are you located, or where's the bulk of your properties located?
So I'm located in St. Louis, Missouri, and that's where my properties are because I am not a person that likes to manage long distance as far as living in another place and managing a property long distance.
Hmm.
Even though I am going to have to get to that place and I'm
Hmm.
preparing myself for that because I'm definitely going to be moving.
Yes.
But yes, right now, all of my properties are in St. Louis.
Okay. So we're going to come back to the managing long distance. So let me ask you, so you have these different things, the medical district, the universities, the construction. How do we then, so if we got our property ready, how do we market to these individuals, or how do we find them, or how do they find us?
Well, the main site that people use for midterm rentals is going to be Furnish Finders. That's
Hmm.
like the main midterm rental site. So you can use that and Airbnb. But when
Hmm.
you list on Airbnb, you just have to list it as a 30-day or longer stay. So you don't list it as a short term, typical 30 days or less. You're saying your minimum days is going to be 30. Okay. Or it could be longer. I have some properties where my minimum days is 90 days
Hmm.
because it depends on the ordinances in that particular community, right?
Okay.
So those are the two top ones, but there are more like corporate housing by owner is another website that you could use. Hello Landing caters to midterm rentals. So there are a variety of different websites and like they're tailored to different categories as far as like the construction or the entertainment or medical perfection. So some of them are like strictly designated towards that. Even military, that's another one I didn't even talk about. There are some sites that are dedicated to housing for military. So if you're near a military base, that is a good thing.
Okay. Okay. So do you say, okay, this property is here, I put it on these sites? Do you base your sites based off of where your property is, or you just, I'm gonna put it on everything and see what hits?
I put it on everything and see because some of these listings or some of these booking platforms you might not hear anything from, right?
Hmm.
Or it might be every blue moon, right? So I list on everywhere possible because you never know who may need your property. Even like with Furnish Finder, you will get a lot of insurance companies or either people or companies that work for insurance companies that need to provide housing for insurance claim victims. They'll reach out to you and say, hey, I have a family who's displaced. Do you have, or is this property available from this date to this date? So you'll get those type of inquiries as well.
So it's interesting because my background, I'm a nurse practitioner.
Hmm.
So I knew about furnish finders, but I always thought furnish finders were only for nurses. I didn't realize other people would look on furnish finders for these midterm rentals as well.
And I think in the beginning, maybe when Furnish Finders probably first came out, it was dedicated for the traveling medical professionals. But right
Mhm.
now, definitely there are a variety of people. I've gotten a CEO who's in one of my properties, got him through Furnish Finder.
Mhm.
That divorced person I told you, Furnish Finder. Like all of these different people are coming through Furnish Finder.
Okay. Okay. So I want to talk about furnish finders a little bit more, but I want to answer this question because furnish finders is not at like Airbnb. It's not doing all the work for you. So I want to talk about that. But
No.
Kimmy says, I live around the corner from a military base where they train pilots. So maybe short term rentals might be best for family coming in for graduation.
Yeah.
May-
I mean, if you know that the family is only coming in for a short amount of time, yeah, short term rental would be fine. But do you guys also think about you could do both? You don't have to do one or the other. You could do short term rental and midterm rental. You just have to adjust your rates when it comes to doing that.
You froze.
So even if you have someone working at the military or coming in for training or whatever it may be, if they're staying for a month or longer, then hey, that's your midterm rental guest. But if their family coming in for graduation, that's short term rental. It just depends on how your calendar falls.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Miss Kelly. She tells you how to do the short term, how to do the midterm, how to make up the for the vacancies. So if you have not, make sure when we're done, you don't leave now, but make sure when you're done, you follow Miss Kelly on YouTube. All of that information is below. You see her YouTube, her Facebook, her Instagram, but I will binge on your shorts because she talks about all of this in less than a minute on a
Yeah.
short. So, somebody else said, I hear insurance rentals are good.
Yep.
So, tell us a little bit about the insurance rentals.
So insurance rentals are good. Usually those are going to go for the larger size houses. And when I say larger, I'm not saying extremely large. I'm saying 3 bedrooms or more is what they're usually looking for. A standalone house and a fenced yard is going to always be more appealing to people with for insurance. But the only problem is with insurance is it's hit or miss. So that's
Mm,
not something that's going to constantly keep your property filled because we never know when something's going to happen to someone's house. We never know when it's going to catch on fire or if there's a natural disaster. That just happens out the blue, right? So you can't think that your property is going to stay filled constantly just off of that. You're going to come to a point where you have to fill that property with some other type of guest. I've had people reach out to me or companies reach out to me for the insurance, but like my properties are never available because they reach out to you at the last minute. Because
mm-hmm,
again, they don't know when it's going to happen. So I'm booking my properties because I have to make my money. So I'm trying to keep them filled. Now, if it happens to fall on I get lucky, I should say, and it falls where I have a vacancy, then great, you know. But because those insurance claims, they're going to pay you out more, okay?
mm-hmm.
Because they're a lot of times they're in a situation where they need a property like ASAP and they cannot find anything that meets their requirements or that the family likes because a lot of times they may send the family different properties, but the family's like, no, we need to be in this school district or we have to have this because we have pets and we need this. So the families may turn those properties down, right? But yes, that is a good avenue to go down. Just know that you're also going to have to fill your property in other ways until you're able to get that insurance family into the property.
And while you're talking about that, I was watching you. You were doing an interview with a team of, like, not a team, but other investors that do midterm rentals. And what I found interesting about the insurance claims is, first, they don't have to be furnished. They can sometimes bring in their own furniture.
Yep,
And there doesn't seem to be a price point. Like, they just ask you, how much are you charging? And I'm like,
exactly.
I don't know. So how do you come up with your price point when you're using the insurance rentals?
So what I would do is I would take because I already know what I need to price my properties at anyway, just in general because they're already out there, right?
Hmm.
So I would take my pricing now and I would just raise it up just a little bit because I know they're gonna pay me. But there's no rhyme or reason, like there's no method to that. So you pretty much have to gauge what you would feel comfortable with or what do you feel like is not going to be too much, right? Because even with my pricing on my properties in general, I'm always going to have my base profit into that. Now, whenever I can make more, I will definitely try to do that. So with the insurance companies, I probably will raise it up at least $200 to $300 a month. And
Hmm.
that's just what I feel like, oh, that shouldn't be a big deal. Because
Okay.
again, this is a family, most likely, staying in your property, meaning your utility bills are going to go up because if they have children, it's just people use stuff, period. This is not like a regular professional or medical professional staying in a property and they're working 12 hours a day and stuff is barely being used. No, stuff is going to be used if a family is going to be in your property. So I would raise it up at least a couple $100s.
Okay. I know, I had a friend that unfortunately was displaced, and it was a similar situation with the insurance. And one thing she mentioned to me was that the insurance is paying for your nightly rate in a hotel. So let's say your average hotel is $150 a night. If your family is large enough, they may have two hotel rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of consider, $300 a night for 30 days. Take that and then say, okay, that number is astronomical. And then, kind of
come
gauge
below
it
that.
based off of that, between
Yep.
that number and what you would charge for rent,
Hmm.
but it's still such a large
It is. That's
gap
what I'm like.
there.
There's no rhyme or reason, but you definitely need to increase your pricing whenever you're dealing with a insurance company. But that is a great way to go about it. Like I would just go under whatever the local extended stays are paying for because those usually have the kitchens and things like that.
Mhm.
So I would take a look at that, like you just said, and go below that a little bit,
Yeah.
and still, but above your price, and still keep it like make it make sense. Basically, that's all I'm
Mhm.
saying.
Okay. Okay. I told y'all I'm taking notes. So, you talked about pricing your midterm rentals. How do you determine the price, what to charge for those midterm rentals?
Well, that's all about market research. So you go out there and you really need to see what other midterm rentals are charging in your area. And when I say in your area, I mean like your neighborhood. Don't go out like 20 miles or anything like that. Like in your exact neighborhood. If there are any other midterm rentals within 5 minutes of you, what are they charging? And we're looking at comparables, just like any other real estate investing, looking at the comparable. So is this a 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom I'm looking at because that's what mine is? Okay, well, how is it furnished? Is the furniture updated and nice? Because that's what mine is. So you're looking at really, really comparable properties. Now, you see what they're charging, and then okay, I can charge around this rate. Now, some of them may be a little bit more, some might be a little less. So you get an idea of what would be a good number, right? But you
Mhm.
also need to consider whether you're doing, if you own the property or you're doing rental arbitrage, you need to look at your base expenses, add in your profit, that your desired profit. And again, that number is all determined on you, okay? Because that's something you have to be comfortable with in order to keep running this business and keep going, and what is going to sustain you. So you got to look at that and then see, okay, well, based off of my expenses and my profit, am I going to be able to charge, within the same ballpark as these other rentals that are in my area? And that's pretty much how you go about it.
So I have a 5 bedroom, and it my tenant is leaving, and I'm like, I'm not doing a long-term rental anymore. Not that my tenant was bad, but because there's more money to be made.
Mm-hmm.
So if you said with your larger homes, you more so look at insurance,
Right.
because they would like those larger homes. But when I do my market research, as I recommend you all do, run your comps, what I find is that nobody's renting a whole house. People are only renting rooms. And to be quite honest with you, what they're charging for 1 or 2 rooms is what I was charging for a long-term rental.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do there? Do you rent out those rooms like that?
So if your area, which it sounds like your area does not support a larger house as far as midterm rentals are concerned, yes, you need to rent rooms out, and you would charge per room depending on what the room comes with, though. So some rooms may have an en-suite, so those you're going to charge
Yeah.
more for versus a room where they have to share a bathroom, right? So yes, you would basically set it up and rent per room, and rent it. I would do it in a way where if you have 5 bedrooms, I would do it so that at least two of those bedrooms, 2 to 3, would take care of my expenses and my profit. And then the
Okay.
other two would be extra because I don't know how often you're going to be able to rent all 5 of them out at the same time. You may
Mhm.
be able to rent 2 to 3 out at the same time. You know what I mean? But just to be on the safe side, I would price it like that so that at least on half of those rooms, you're taking care of what you need for yourself.
Okay. Do you have any that you rent out the room, and do you find that to be more work than renting out the entire property?
I do not rent out rooms. I only rent out entire places.
Mhm.
But that's what my market supports as well. I only stick
Okay.
to anywhere from a 1 bedroom. Well, really, my market supports a studio up to 2 bedrooms,
Mhm.
basically. So I stick with 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. But if you do rent out rooms, yes, it's going to be more work because now you're thinking about strangers staying in a house together and you have to manage
Right.
that, right? So we don't know what personalities are like. We don't know how people are going to get along, how clean people are. So you are definitely going to have to be more organized and have rules and have a structure. So, for example, If I was to rent out rooms in a big house, I'm definitely going to have a cleaning crew there every once a week. And that has
Mhm.
to be covered by my guests, right? So you have to charge enough to make sure that's taken care of. Because we don't know, like people sharing a bathroom, nobody's cleaning the bathroom. That's going to be a problem. I know it will be for me. Now, if I have my own bathroom, that's a whole nother story. But
Mhm.
sharing a bathroom with a stranger, that's a problem. I need it to be clean, right? Even the kitchen, the common areas, people share those areas. Who's washing dishes? Or are people cleaning up after themselves? Are they cleaning off the stove if they spill something? Like those little things become major problems. So you definitely need to have something set up or have that property organized so that you can minimize any issues. In addition to that, you need to put like individual locks on doors and just different things you need to take in consideration.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know, Kelly. That sounds like work.
Uh,
Uh,
it may be again. I do not rent out rooms because I don't want to deal with any extra drama. I don't. That's just me. And I feel like that could potentially happen. But there are some people or groups that travel together. Like there are some construction groups that travel together and they want to stay in a house together. But we just don't know when that will happen. Even with the medical professionals, some of them do travel together, but we don't know when they will come through, you know? So you have to just be prepared for what you know is coming through. And that's usually a single person coming in to work on an assignment.
right, right. So I said I wanted to go back to the furnished finders versus Airbnb because I want people to understand that there's a big difference in what Airbnb does for you when you list your property and what furnished finders does for you when you list your property. So can you go over that with us?
Yes. Okay. Airbnb is your typical booking platform. They handle everything. So they are getting the guest information. They're supposed to be verifying these guests. Now, I don't know how they verify the guests, but they are. Usually, the guest has to provide an ID or something like that, especially if you require it on your listings. They collect the payments, they handle any issues, between you and the guest. So they are that middleman. They're making sure things run smoothly, right? Furnish Finder, they are just only connecting you with people. So it's just like a matchmaking type of process. These people need housing, they submit something on the platform. You have a listing out there. Hey, they'll reach out to you and say, I'm interested in your property. You guys get to talking and you have to verify that person. So you need to check, depending on who it is, but you need to check backgrounds, credit checks, you need to check out employment verifications, contact their recruiters and make sure they're employed. And for each type of guest, there's a different way that you verify their information. So that's why I'm kind of just giving you a broad overview. But you have to do that lead work just like you would as a long term rental landlord, right? You need to make sure whoever is coming to your property is who they say they are and they're going to take care of this property. So that is the difference.
Okay. So you're going back and you're still vetting your tenants because this
Yeah,
becomes your tenant. It's over 30 days.
correct.
So, legally this is your tenant.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you're vetting the tenant correctly. On my website, charisma-cares.com, I do have a course that is about vetting tenants. However, it is not going to be specific to every type of tenant that you have.
Mhm.
So if you're doing something specific and you want to know how to do that specifically, you can reach out to Miss Kelly. She may be able to help you with that. If you need the groundwork of what it means to vet a tenant, then you can look at that class that I have on my website. So I want to bring out a few more questions. They want to know what percentage does furnish finders versus Airbnb take?
Well, Furnish Finder does not take a percentage because, again, they're just a matchmaking platform. So you have to pay a fee, which is $99 to have your listing put up on Furnish Finder. Now, that's $99 per year, per listing. Okay. So you just pay that up front. And for that entire year, you're able to connect with people. And that's it. Okay. No other fees, nothing else. Airbnb, I forgot what percentage they charge, but they definitely charge, a percentage per booking. I'm just not sure right now exactly how much that is. But Furnish Finder does not charge a fee.
Yeah, Airbnb, they charge a percentage and it keeps going up, but they also provide you with an insurance policy.
Right.
With furnished finders, you're going to need to make sure you insure your home, which I feel like even if you Airbnb it, you should still
Have some
insure
right.
your home anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And I think also too, you're paying that fee to Airbnb, but again, remember they're managing everything with the booking process. So they are that person, or they are responsible for making sure you get paid. You don't have to track anybody down. They're going to do that for you because that's their money too, right? If there's
Mhm.
any disputes or issues, they get involved. You're not just going back and forth with a guest. You have a middleman there. So there's, some perks, of course, to Airbnb because it's more of a hands-off approach. But there are also some perks to using Furnish Finder because you get all the money. So it just depends. Like I said, I use both. It is what it is. I do raise my rates on Airbnb because of that fee, and I still end up getting the same amount I would have gotten if they would have came through Furnish Finder.
Right, right. So, have you thought about or do you have your own booking platform that you use?
I do have my own website. Now, people don't really use it much because with your own website, you have to do SEO, you got to get it out there, you got to do some marketing. Like, I just haven't done as much as I need to do to get people through my website, but I do have one. But also, like, majority of the people are coming through those two sources or sites. So, it's just not that big of a deal right now, but I do have my own booking website.
Okay. So, I read that booking.com is, I don't know if you all noticed, but they're kind of starting to try to get into that longer term rental space. And I've read that they're going to be revamping some things so they can kind of compete with Airbnb and, the longer term bookings. Do you list your properties on like VRBO or booking.com, or you just stick to those two that you mentioned for the most
Well,
part?
so I don't list on VRBO just because I don't like them. Honestly, I have had a bad experience with them, so I just like no, I'm good on that. But that's just my experience. That doesn't mean they're a bad company or anything like that. So with Booking.com, I had my short term when I first started out. I would put my short term rentals on Booking.com, but I have not put my midterm rentals because I didn't think that was something that would cater to midterm rentals. So what you just said was new information to me. So I will be looking into that to see if I need to put my properties on there as well.
Yeah, they're trying to compete and they're revamping. One thing that I found with booking.com as a consumer was when I would look up the bookings, there's no way to communicate with the seller or the person that's renting the home, which was a problem for me because if
Hmm.
I'm going to go and stay here, I need to know that, I need some kind of response from somebody.
Hmm.
So that's what would make me a little nervous. So I'm curious to see what they actually roll out and how helpful it is, if it's really going to be helpful for short term, mid-term rentals or how that will go, because that will be another driving force out here
Hmm.
with all the different changes Airbnb is making.
Right. Right.
Um, I know you mentioned, some rentals may be 30-day stays, but some may be 60 or 90-day stays based off of the ordinances. Can
Hmm.
you talk about city ordinances, county ordinances, and things of that nature?
Okay, yeah. So basically, like where I live, we have what we call St. Louis City, and that's just a whole entire, urban inner city area. Then we have St. Louis County. Well, in St. Louis County, we have all these individual little towns and little, communities that have their own governments, right? So you'll be driving down the street and you're in one district, then you drive down, cross one little block, you're in another one, right? And that's a whole nother governing body, whole nother police department, all of that, right? So these places have their own ordinances regarding long-term rentals and short-term rentals. Whenever you're looking for a property, you need to look up those ordinances to see what the rental rules or laws are for those communities. So some communities don't allow short-term renting at all, right? But you can do midterm renting because midterm rentals fall under the long-term rental ordinances. Now, that also varies because some communities say, okay, well, as long as a person is staying in a property for 30 days, they are considered a tenant and they fall under long-term rental, tenant laws. Well, some communities say, well, they have to be in the property at least 60 days or 90 days for them to be considered a long-term tenant. So in those cases, I have to adjust and I have to say, okay, well, if they only allow 90 days or that's the minimum, then that's what I have to do. I have to only put that people can stay on my property for 90 days or longer, which is not a problem because most people, again, are staying for 3 months and then they end up extending their contracts, right? So it hasn't been an issue, but you do have to pay attention to that before you pick a property. In that particular community where I have to have people there for 90 days, they don't allow short-term renting at all, period, right? So if I have a opening or a gap, then I have to cover that, which means I have to make sure I have reserves to cover this vacancy until my next guest comes. Well, if I had something, and I do have something in St. Louis City, I can always throw somebody in there for a couple of days to fill a vacancy if I want to. I just choose not to because I don't want to deal with that. But
Yeah.
I can always throw someone in there for a week or whatever, however long, just to get some extra money in between my bookings.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's something really important. And that was the thing that I worried about with people that were buying houses specifically for short-term rental.
Hmm.
I would tell my students, you do not want to buy a house based off of the money you will make for a short-term rental.
Right.
Buy it based off of the money you would make for a long-term rental. And if you can do short-term or midterm, which is becoming more popular now, then
Hmm.
you're good. But all else fails, if they put out an ordinance and say you can't do this anymore, you can always do a long term tenant, push come to shove.
Right. You can pivot. Yep.
hmm Because in Atlanta, I mean, I think everybody knows how that had went in Atlanta because it was a major thing. They were buying up all the houses for short-term rental, and now they can only have like three houses, and these
Hmm.
investors that have like 8 and 10 houses, and they base their numbers off of the money they were going to make for short-term rental, and now they're going to be upside down.
Right. Right.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Unless they do midterm renting, then and again, it just depends on where their property is located as well.
Right, right. So I'm not sure what the ordinances say about the midterm rentals. I'm sure they want you at least to have somebody there 30 or 60 days, but that would put you definitely in the midterm rental space.
Right, right. And again, you're going by the long-term rental ordinances. So just
Right.
look and see what those say, and that's what you would follow. Also look at the occupancy permits and all of that and what those rules are. And so you have to kind of look at a lot of different little things.
hmm So here's a one question that kind of ties into that. Does Airbnb or the other platforms help you with a guest that may refuse to leave?
Okay. Now I have never had this experience, right? I've heard of it, but I have not had this experience. So I do know if you contact Airbnb, of course, they're always going to try to help you. But at that point, that person is now squatting and that becomes a legal matter. I know for me, I do put things in my property. So let's just say I have a sign I put up that says, like, if you stay beyond your end date, you are then considered trespassing and legal action will be taken in the state of Missouri. Like I have like just this little placard that I post up right in the property so people can definitely see that. And in my house rules, I, put that information as well. But if somebody ever stays in the property beyond when they're supposed to, definitely that's when your paperwork comes into place. So a lot of people, when they do Airbnb, they'll also make the guest sign an agreement. So once that guest signs an agreement and they have that clause in there, like your end date is this date and you have to vacate, or this becomes, or you're trespassing, or whatever the wording they choose to use, then that's a document that you can use whenever you have to call the police and be like, hey, this person's in my property, they won't leave, and see if the police can get them out. Now, with midterm renting, these people are, if they're not coming through Airbnb and you don't have an agreement, then they're signing a lease. Okay, so they're actually signing a lease. I have my people sign a month-to-month lease. And that basically gives them tenant rights, realistically, because it is a lease, right? But I have to have them sign something so that I could take recourse if anything happens. So if anybody stays beyond their time at my property, I actually would have to kind of I would have to do an eviction process basically to get them out the property if they do not leave on their own. Now, of course, I would go about it by calling the police and trying to get them out that way, because maybe that would scare people enough. But if they still won't leave and they actually do become squatters, there is an eviction process I would have to go through.
So, I'll comment on this one as well. That is one thing that you want to make sure. You want to make sure you have a lease. And me doing long term, I definitely have my lease. I talk about that in the course where we talk about how to manage your tenant. One thing that we do a lot in long term rentals is called cash for keys.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a tenant, midterm or long term, that would not leave, I would try the cash for keys approach first, especially if you are in a tenant friendly state. So I always tell people know if you're in a landlord friendly state or a tenant friendly state. I'm in a landlord friendly state. Typically, Republican states are landlord friendly states. Just kind of rule of thumb, not always. But basically, we can evict in 30 days. It does not take long to get somebody out of here. In New York, I think they could take 6 months up to a year. I mean, you in a big situation in a
Yeah.
place like that, New York, California. So the process of cash for keys is basically you pay them to get out. I mean, it may sound like why would I pay them, but depending on how much it costs you to do an eviction, the
Mm-hmm.
money that's lost during that time that you're doing an eviction, that's all revenue. You may be able to give them $500 or I mean $1,000. Say, clean up this place, give me the keys, and I'll give you this money and you can go. It may sound counterproductive, but it keeps you out. And then that way they don't have to have an eviction on their record either.
Right.
So it keeps you out of the courts. It keeps you from paying court costs because one thing people don't realize is when you go to court for an eviction, you still have to recoup your money.
Yeah.
That when they say, okay, you won this case, that doesn't mean that they give you money. Like they get that person put out, the police will go and have them put out, but that won't stop them from ruining your place. And you still have to go through another judgment to try to get the money or try to garnish their wages. So
Yep.
just because you evict somebody doesn't mean you're getting the money right away. And that's why cash for keys is a big deal. Like Kelly, I haven't had that situation. I'm one of those people, I feel like if you vet the person pretty well on the front end,
Mm-hmm.
then typically, knock on wood, you don't have those problems on the back end.
Right. Right.
Um, if they raise red flags, I mean, they may want to stay for a long time at those rates. But if those red flags raise or something in your gut doesn't feel right, you are better off passing and
Mm-hmm.
waiting for another tenant than dealing with that situation.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, there are times that I've had people reach out to me, and I'm like, nah, mm-mm. I mean, you really do have to pay attention, even though, like, right now, I have somebody who's local staying in one of my properties, but you do still have to pay attention to some local people who are reaching out to you, because it's like, okay, well, why are you trying to spend more money to stay in a furnished property when you could just get an unfurnished, long-term rental and stay there? Like, that's a red flag to me.
Hmm.
But some, like I said, in some situations I understand the guy who's going through the divorce, he wants to buy a house, and so he doesn't have anything, he doesn't want to go buy all this furniture. Right now he's still trying to figure things out, so I get that part, but he was still vetted. We still did a background check, credit check, verify, everything before we said yes. So definitely don't ever feel like you are in a position, and I know a lot of people do this when they're into short-term rentals and midterm rentals. I know you have to pay your bills and I know stuff might be coming up, but don't ever put yourself in a position where you feel desperate and you have to take somebody, because then you end up making the wrong decisions and that's
Yeah.
going to cost you more money in the long run.
Yeah. And you want to have a criteria. You want to use that same criteria. When you start to bend your criteria, bend
Mm-hmm.
those rules, I think that's when you get in trouble. When
Yep.
you know you don't want pets in that house, stick with no pets in the house. That person may say, "Well, I'll pay extra if, I can bring my pet." I kind of see that as a red flag because it's all these other houses over here that will let you do pets. So why would you, want mine, or, whatever your rule is, stick to if you kind of stick to that criteria, then you can kind of, you know, weed out some of those guests.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked, "What are some other red flags you look for?" Look,
If okay, so basically, if somebody, and this is really when I was doing short-term rentals, if somebody contacted me through Airbnb and then wanted to try to talk outside the platform, that's always a red flag. So don't ever
mhm,
fall for that. Or if they are trying to pay you outside of the platform, that's always a red flag, right? With midterm rentals, I really haven't had a lot of red flags. I think, like I just said, I look out for the local people. Even like you said, the people who have pets. Some of my properties, and in the beginning, I did not allow pets. But when I looked at the market research and I saw, well, there aren't enough properties out here that allow pets. And if my property, so that's when I kind of changed my rules, right? I was like, well, if it doesn't have carpet, then I'm okay with having a pet. Like I did, but I made that decision to do that, right? Based off of the market research. And I still do charge more money, and they have to pay me a non-refundable pet fee, for a couple $100s. And people are paying that. So, I mean, those are decisions I made. But as far as any other red flags, I think it's just really if somebody is either like being rude to you through the platform, if they're messaging you and you're like, or something just doesn't sound right or feel right when they're messaging you, or you even pick up the phone to talk to them, then just kind of go with your intuition and say, yeah, I don't know if I'm feeling this.
yeah.
It's a case by case basis.
Yeah, and I think even talking about the pet thing as well, I don't know, I do a lot of reading and listening, but someone was saying that they were finding that they weren't getting as many bookings in the
Right.
area. And they looked around at others and they found that everybody else took pets and they did not take pets. So, that's one of those things when you're doing your market research and you may have to pivot.
Hmm.
Another thing maybe if you're not getting bookings, do your market research and maybe that you're just too high. Yeah,
Right.
that's what you wanted, but you have to be competitive because a lot of people are getting into the midterm rental space because of maybe they want to travel, they may have a short term rental, and now they can no longer do short term rentals. They're just tired of doing them. They want to make extra money on the side. So yeah, you have to be very competitive.
Right, right. And even if it's just the way your furniture looks, like I still see pictures where people clearly just put old furniture or like furniture they don't want anymore into their
Mm,
rentals. It's like, I mean, somebody might rent it out, but are you going to get the rates you want? And how often is it going to be booked? When you look at these other properties that are around you that are all, have nice furniture and updated and this and that. So you
mm.
have to consider all of those things.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think about that you need to make sure your furniture is within line of what everybody else has in the
Yep.
area. Okay. So we're gonna pivot a little bit, but before we do, does anyone else have any more questions about this, about the midterm rentals? And while they're asking their questions, I want to talk a little bit about this rental revenue roadmap.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about that, Kelly?
So yeah, the rental revenue roadmap was created, and it's actually a planner, and it's created to help you minimize your expenses in your midterm rentals, right? So it gives you all of these tips and things you can do to minimize your expenses so that you can make the maximum amount of profit or revenue, right? And then it gives you space to plan things out, do your market research, and write your notes down, and continue to do that on a regular basis. So that's really what the roadmap was created for, to help you in your midterm rental business reduce your expenses as much as possible.
Okay. And that's also in the description. So you can just click on that in the description. If you like this segment of the show, make sure you like and subscribe. Click that subscribe button and share. But in the description, I have all of the links as to where we can find Miss Kelly, as well as the rental revenue roadmaps. So I'm going to let you throw some questions in there, but I want to add a little twist here. So when I was reaching out to Miss Kelly, what I found out was that she was kind of aware of me because of our connection. She is looking at moving to Panama,
Yeah.
and she is using everything she's made here and the income that she has from her rental business and her real estate business to fund those travels. She's part of the Exodus group. For those of you that are in Exodus, I have a lot of Exodus people. And for those of you that know, Exodus is basically Black women that are living abroad,
Hmm.
or want to live abroad. You go in there, you learn all about what we're doing, and you take that information and you make it your own. So, tell us what made you say, okay, it's time for me to start thinking about living abroad.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this for a while, and I actually lived in China for a while, some years ago. I think it was like 2012. I actually taught English in China, and I lived there for a minute. Then I
Cool.
came back to the States, and life happened. I had got married, and this happened, and that happened, and it just was like, oh, okay. But I continued to travel throughout this whole time anyway, because again, that's what I've always loved to do. But I want to say in 2000, probably 19, I really started getting serious. 2019, 2020, I got serious about like, okay, I'm really looking more into moving outside the country again. Then I got guardianship of my nephews, which are my sons, and I really was like, okay, all of these things that are happening here in the States, and I'm like, I just want them to be able to be who they are without any recourse, basically. Like, I
Right.
don't want to have to worry about them going outside and playing, or them being having their own personalities without that being a threat to anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started getting a little bit serious. I started looking at Rashida Dow's videos, and then I
Yep.
saw Stephanie Perry, and I started, I was like, okay. So then I attended the virtual Exodus Summit. I think it was in 2021. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the one I went to, right? So then I was like, okay, all right. So I'm getting all these tips. And at first I was thinking Mexico. Then I thought Costa Rica. Then Panama was on my mind. But then I was like, I don't know if the cost of living is low enough for me in Panama. Right. So I kind of scratched that, and I was kind of focusing on Costa Rica. But then my boyfriend, we were talking, and he was like, I was like, well, where would you rather go? And he was like, well, I think Panama would be better because if it suits they have the amenities basically. I think we'll be a little bit more comfortable switching to a new country when it's a little bit more not like America, but they do have a lot of amenities that could cater to us, and we would feel a little bit more comfortable, right? So I started looking more into Panama, and then I was like, And then I know someone who lives there. So I was like, okay. So we're actually going to do a scouting trip, the whole family. So me, the two kids, and my boyfriend, we are going for a month, and that's in June. So we're leaving on May 31st, and we will stay until June 30th, checking out,
Okay.
checking it out. And we originally I thought I was going to check out the entire country, but then I have to think about it again. Like, realistically, where do I want to be? I want to be closer to the international airport because
Mm-hmm.
I know, we're going to want to hop around, come back to the States, this, and that. So we are going to stay like within a 2 hour radius of Panama City and kind of check those areas out.
Okay. Okay. So I absolutely love Panama. Some of you may know my family is from Panama and from Costa Rica. I have cousins, direct family members that's still there. So I've done both, and hands down, I love Panama over Costa Rica. I have done the video. The Costa Rica has a bit too many reptiles and animals.
Oh yes.
For me and the howling monkeys every morning at 6 a.m. It was cute the first week. It was no longer cute by week 3 or 4.
Hmm.
I feel that cost of living is less expensive in Panama than Costa Rica. Your cost of living can get high very quickly in Costa Rica. I feel like in Panama, you can get a 2 bedroom condo on the beach for under 1,200.
Hmm.
Which I mean, for some people, for some places, 1,200, is still a little pricey. But when you're comparing Panama and Costa Rica, and when you compare it to the rates we have here in the States, it's not as pricey.
Hmm.
Um, and some of you may realize Panama uses the same currency that we do. The only
Yes.
thing that's different are their coins because of the relationship between America and Panama back during the times of the Panama Canal. And a lot of our Americans were merchant marines and they worked on the canal, so there were a lot of close ties there, which is why it is very similar to here. I also like Panama because I know you said you'll have the little ones. They have one of the best children's hospitals there. So, if anything was to happen, you have a great hospital there. But I feel like it gives you the best of both worlds. Like you
Right.
get beach life, you get city life all wrapped up into one.
Hmm.
Um, so what areas, if you don't mind sharing, what areas are you thinking about looking at?
Okay, so we are starting off in well, it'll be Panama City. So the neighborhood, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, but it's El Congreal, I think
Uh-huh.
is
It
the
means the
neighborhood we're going
crab.
to start. Is that right? Did I say it
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, okay.
Congrego.
Yes. So we're going to start there. Then we are looking to go to Punta Pacifica,
Okay.
that area, because that's closer near the water. I don't know. At first, I was thinking about going towards like the Coronado areas, but I'm like, honestly, I don't want to be around a whole bunch of retired expats. I'm
You
younger,
will.
right? And I have little kids, so I want to be around people that are, similar. And I just feel like that I probably would not be happy in that
Mhm.
area, but I would love to be able to find a little coastal city or town that is off of the beach where we can stay there and it still has a thriving family kind of community with younger people and kids and things like that. So yeah, that's what we're doing. And then once we go from Punta Pacifica, we're just going to kind of figure it out. I didn't want to plan the whole thing because I
Yeah.
wanted to get a feel, and this is what the trip is for. It's just to get a feel of how do we like it? Do we, what community do we want to, are we interested in? Do we want to be in the city with all this concrete around us, or do we want to be near the water, which I really prefer to be near the water? But I also I don't want it to be inconvenient. I want to be able to hop in the city and get there and get back out, and still be comfortable. So we'll figure it out along the way.
Yeah, I did go to Coronado. I'm
Coronado.
mixing up my
Hmm.
countries. And it is a lot of retirees, a lot of older retirees. By being in the expat groups, it does sprinkle in some expats. But yeah, you're right. It does end up being a lot of older retirees. I'm interested to see what area you end up in. Now, the city, there is a beach. There's
Yeah.
not a beach you can get into. It's just a beach you can look at, but there is a beach. But I love Panama. I think it'll be where I land when I'm done just touring the world. Um, VAM Experience said, I am thinking about Panama too. Let's go, Miss Kelly.
I'm working on it. I just have to. Well, you know what? I think what's probably going to happen is I'll be there part time if I really like the country. Be there part time and in the states part time.
Hmm.
But if it was up to me, because I still have to consider the boyfriend and all of this, if it was up to me, I probably would be there full time. But we need to do a little bit more work on him.
Girl, I know. So, I mean, some women are moving and then they just visit the significant other and you got to make it work the way that it works for you.
Yeah, I'm not about that life though. I'm sorry. We go. I mean, I don't mind leaving him for a little bit, maybe a week or two, but it's not
Uh-uh.
long, not months at a time. I'm not about that life.
Right. Talking about you're going to have to come on now.
Right. So we got to figure something out.
Right. Celeste said, I toured Punta Pacifica, a great place on the come up. So
Okay.
maybe a great place for you to get in, get some real estate out there too.
Yeah,
Um,
there's definitely some room for investment and opportunity because Panama is growing and they're working on the infrastructure. This is something I
mhm,
did learn. They're working on the infrastructure so that it's going to be easier to get to different other communities around the city, even across
mhm.
what is it, the Pan American Bridge.
Yeah.
So those communities across that bridge, they're developing in them, but it just right now it's a challenge for people once they go over that bridge for them to come back into the city and be like, okay, I'm gonna hang out and then go back. Once they're
Yeah.
over there, they're pretty much like, I'm over here, I'm done, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to when they improve the roads and things like that, and it's easier and traffic is kind of eased up, what things would look like. But I definitely think there's an opportunity to invest in some real estate over there.
Yeah, that Pan American, I rented a car and went out and stayed in Coronado and then had to drive back for my flights. I budgeted. It should have taken like I think an hour and a half. I gave myself 2.5 hours and I still missed my flight.
Oh yeah, see, mm-mm.
So if I could ever give you some advice, get a place in the city before you
Yeah,
leave.
yeah,
Don't even try. It was the first flight I think I've ever actually missed. So it actually turned out good because I ended up going to Costa Rica through a different through the Panama Costa Rica intersection right there.
okay,
So it turned out to be really good. I just added on more time to my trip. But yeah, that highway can be a beast, especially once you get to the city. So I would love to see how they do that.
yeah.
Um, Let me ask you this. How do you plan to manage your business here while you're living abroad?
Well, and that's a stressful question because I am so like, oh my gosh. All right. So what I've put into place so far is I've just pretty much put these storage kind of foot lockers that lock up. I've put those in the properties. A majority of them. It's a few more I need to add, but they have like all of my household supplies for when my cleaners come to restock. Right. So my toilet tissue, all of that stuff, paper towels, cleaning supplies, all of that is in those foot lockers. So that's one thing I started. Then I already have a cleaner and actually two cleaners in place. So one of them is a full-time cleaner, and one of them she has a full-time job and cleans on the side. So that's why I ended up getting two. But the one who has a full-time job, she works for a school, so I know in the summer she's going to be open. So I already asked her if she'll be able to do some extra tasks for me while I'm gone in June. So she's already agreed. We just need to meet up, and I need to give her more details. But some other things I'm planning to do is going to buy extra linens, like extra sets of sheets and towels, so that if something's damaged or stained, they can easily have something to pick up and go to and replace it with. But those are just really what I'm doing. Everything else is online, so
Mhm.
I can manage that. Also, my mother, she works in the business with me as far as midterm rentals. So she would be like the emergency contact person if something needed to happen where someone needed to get there as soon as possible, she would be that contact person. But they can still contact me first. But if they can't reach me, they can contact her. But it will be something like, again, if somebody's locked out and she needs to go over there, which I've also put things in place for my guests to be able to get in the house without someone going over there. But if there's a chance, that they can't open up a lockbox because the code is messed up, because that has happened before as well.
Mhm.
And we have to take a physical key, then that would be my mom. So I have some people in place, and we're gonna roll with it. And I know for me, I'm a person who likes to make sure things are on point, and I have to surrender. I'm gonna have to be like, all right, you know what? I can't do nothing about this, and I'm gonna have to let the chips fall where they may and do as much as I can if something was to happen. So I'm just doing a lot of upfront preparation, and then we'll just see how it all plays out.
And I think it's good that you're doing 1 month so you can kinda see how
Hmm.
all of that goes. But, I manage from abroad, and I mean, I rarely get a question or anything like that. But, even when I was here, we had a property in Alabama that we did Airbnb, and what I found was that our housekeeper was worth gold.
Hmm.
I mean, that is who would go and, restock things if they needed something, do it that way. One thing that we did, we kept everything stocked up, like you said. But if we needed something, we would just do Amazon and send it. Actually, we would send it to her, and
Hmm.
she would put it in there. If there was already a tenant there, we would send it to her, and she would put it in there, or we would send it to the place, and she would use that and restock it, and make sure that, when they left, take a lot of pictures, let us know if anything was broken or messed up, or, because all of that matters. You got to know that right away.
Right.
But you kind of learn to let go when you don't have a choice.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was like. I have to just surrender because I'm not going to stress myself out. I want to enjoy my trip and get everything I need to get out of Panama. So I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna do what I can do, and whatever happens, happens.
Yes, because even with the lockbox changing the code, we would have her change the code. But what I do with my rentals, I have the electric, lock on there. But I see
Mhm.
that now they have one that you can program from anywhere. So I said, I think I'm gonna try that one, because then I'll be able to reprogram it from my phone,
Yeah.
and unlock it, lock it from the phone. Of course, you have an emergency key around,
Hmm.
but just to make it as seamless as possible, like you mentioned, those little things, so that it's all there, even though you're not.
Right. And I do have those locks. Like all of my locks are those Bluetooth locks. So I can
Okay.
set the codes. But it's just that my I don't know what it is about my electronic locks, but some of them just give me the blues. It's just like
Ah,
I don't know what it is. The screen might go out, or the internet connection, or batteries are dead. It's just something. But yes, I can do all of that stuff from my phone, but I also keep that actual lock box with the physical key at the property for them to get into if something was to happen. But again, I've had on those physical lock boxes where I set a code and then that code doesn't work, and I'm like, but it's like I set it months ago, and it's like, what happened? This was the code I wrote down for this lockbox. So,
yeah.
I don't know what happens, but that has happened to me, and I've had to actually go over there and with the actual key or figure the whole situation out.
Yeah, that's a good backup system. As many Airbnbs as I've been in, I went to Colombia and had an Airbnb, and oh my gosh, the flight with the delays, we got in like midnight.
Hmm.
So you think I'm here at midnight with a kid that uses a wheelchair, getting in at midnight, trying to get in, and her lockbox does not work. Like, it was one of those, it wasn't a lockbox, it was a digital keypad. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
know I'm not crazy. I've used these keypads before. I could not get in. The taxi driver tries, he can't get in. We wait there for a minute, can't get in touch with her. She didn't leave an extra key with the security, so nobody had an extra key. And I literally ended up going to a hotel that night because I couldn't get in. And I didn't even bother to go back to the property. I just Airbnb refunded me, and I just found something else.
Okay.
But that's a good thing to have that backup up, especially if you have somewhere where you have security.
Mm-hmm.
But to have that backup and have a backup person, because she didn't have a backup person to call
Right.
when I was locked out. So yeah, that's really smart because you don't want to lose your tenant based off of something that's kind of simple, just the entry to the
Right.
apartment.
Right.
So, yeah. Let's see. We had another question here. Do you invest or spend money to update cosmetically upfront to charge higher rates, or do you wait and update as you go or as you've generated some income to put towards the update? So this is with your new rentals.
Okay, so depending on if I own them or if I'm doing rental arbitrage, right? So if I own them, then I'm going to make sure it looks, everything is up to par. Anyway, now there may be a few things that I can hold off on. So for example, I have one property where the kitchen cabinets are not bad, but they can definitely use an upgrade eventually.
Hmm.
So eventually, yes, I will upgrade those kitchen cabinets or maybe update a light fixture. But if it's something I know that it's not too bad, it's not looking like from 1970 something, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna leave it alone if it's decent. Now for my rental arbitrage ones, I'm going into the property and it has to look a certain way up front. And if it doesn't look a certain way up front, then for example, I have a landlord who she actually owns the entire building and I rental arbitrage the entire building, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
there are some units where the kitchens, excuse me, don't the kitchens don't look the way I would want them to look. But then I negotiated a lower price as far as the rent is concerned because I'm like, this is not up to par. But she is eventually going to update those kitchens, right? So it was kind of like a give and take situation. But I would like to go into a property and it looks the way that I need it to look up front.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the best way to do it. Now,
Okay.
if you're buying something and you're buying something at a discount, then yeah, you're just going to have to put that money into it. But again, it's your property, so you are definitely improving it, and that's going to make that appreciation of that property go up anyway. So it's always going to be a win-win situation for you.
And also, for those of you that don't know what rental arbitrage is, we're not going to go into it in deep detail here because we're almost done because Miss Kelly got things to do.
And I need to plug up my computer. Give me a second. Go ahead.
Okay. But rental arbitrage is basically when you rent out a property and you're basically subleasing it. You want to talk to the landlord. I know there's people that don't talk to the landlord first. I don't, it's not actually legal, but
No, it's not.
you want to talk to the landlord, and basically what they get is you're paying the rent every month. You may give them a larger deposit at the beginning. You may even pay them a little bit more in rent than they would normally get, but you come in, you furnish the apartment, and then you list it as a short-term rental or a mid-term rental.
Mhm.
Sometimes people are like, well, why wouldn't the landlord do it themselves? Because they don't want to do all the work that it is involved. They don't want to furnish it, keep up with those tenants as well as their regular tenants and things of that nature. It was very popular amongst like younger adults. Like they
Mhm.
seemed to be doing it first. Everybody was like, "How are they making this money?" Uh, but it's really caught on. So a lot of people do it, and you look at it as you're paying a year worth of rent
Mhm.
versus so let's say a year maybe you paying 20,000 versus buying a whole house or property, which would require you to do a 30-year mortgage. So anything to add to that, Miss Kelly?
No, no, that was a great explanation. That's pretty much what it is. And like Christmas said, you should be telling the landlord what you're doing. Now, everybody's not going to allow you to rental arbitrage. So don't think it's just that easy and you can walk in
Mm-mm.
somewhere and they're like, oh, yeah, you could do this. You're definitely going to get more no's, but you will eventually get a yes. So you just have to do it the proper way and say the proper things. That's all.
Yeah. So that's definitely a option. So anything else you want to share with us before you go, Miss Kelly?
No, I mean, like I said, I'm using my rental income to fund my travels. In Panama, like you said, I am working on. Well, actually, not working on it. I do have a membership, a rental revenue builders membership. So, if anybody's interested in rentals in general, and you just want to be a part of a membership where you get information on a monthly basis, I do have that as well. And that's really it. That's what I got going on. But if you need some more information about midterm rentals, definitely hit me up in those links that Charisma provided below, and we can go from there.
Yes, and you have her website, you have her IG, all of that information is there. I'll also put her website here in the chat. MissKellyMichelle.com.
Hmm.
So definitely go on there and visit with her. And I mean, I think this was amazing. On Sunday, the 21st at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, where we're gonna do a little class where we're going to talk focus all on midterm rentals.
Okay.
So definitely I'll post the link for that course. We'll be doing all midterm rentals on I believe it's the 21st. Oh, me and my dates. But it's on there. We're gonna do that. Also, make sure you go to Miss Kelly's website. Don't forget the roadmap, the rental revenue roadmap. Make sure
Okay.
you download that, get that information to get started. I'm all about having ways for us to make money without working hard. If you're here because you want to leave the US, this is a way to do it. If you're here because you just need to make some extra income and you had no idea you could use your garage or your basement to do that, and you came on late, make sure you catch the replay because Miss Kelly told us about how to do that too. Also, make sure you subscribe to her channel, Miss Kelly Michelle, because she drops gems there every day. Some of those gems, it may say from 2 years ago, and they are just as good today as they were 2 years ago. So, thank you so much, Miss Kelly, because like I said, I've been following you and I've been taking notes.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you for
um,
inviting me.
you are so welcome. And, I may invite you back to find out how that Panama trip went because
Okay.
we are all about traveling here.
Yes.
So,
And I'm
keep,
gonna document that too. I think I'm gonna document it and put it on my either YouTube channel or maybe Instagram. I don't know yet. Let
okay.
me see how I feel about it.
Definitely. And she has already connected with the group in Panama. I can't remember the name of the group right now.
The Black women in Panama.
Yes, Black Women in Panama group with Mary Goff. She does some
Hmm.
meetups and stuff as well. I sent some ladies over to her. So yeah, this is gonna be amazing. Make sure you do like Celeste said, hit the like button, share this with a friend, replay it, and catch Miss Kelly Michelle. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
All right, bye, you
Ciao.
guys.